Hello?
Hi. Hi, everyone. This is Barbara Arnwine, and we are so happy that you have joined our show today. Thank you so much for all of your amazing work this year. As we come to the end of the year, our show is going to focus on the year in review. Yes, we're going to talk about what has happened this entire year. We're so grateful for all of the activism, all of the leadership, all of the opposition that you've shown this year. So you are wonderful listeners. We're so grateful for you, and we just want to say to you, keep on standing strong. And so it is my honor, my joy to introduce again and to welcome back to our show my mighty co-host, none other than the mighty Daryl D. Jones, who is the chair of the board of the Transformative Justice Coalition, who is also the wonderful, amazing, creative leader who is always making sure that the voices of the people are heard. Hey, Daryl, welcome back again to Igniting Change.
Hey, Barbara. It must be Tuesday. It must be noon Eastern Standard Time because we're talking about igniting change. My goodness, Barbara, as we sit back and we reflect on 2025, I go back to the old gospel stuff. I sit back and I wonder how I got over because, my goodness, 2025 seemed to have all kinds of hills, all kinds of challenges, all kinds of stuff that was just going on to try to stop us from progressing as a society, progressing as a democracy, progressing with our voting rights. So, yeah, Barbara, we have a lot to talk about in this show. And you're right, we have just some great guests that can really lift this up and illuminate these issues, talking about the 2025 year-end recap and the stories the media missed or got wrong, Barbara.
Oh, yes. And we have, made sure that for this show that we have invited some amazing guests who will really blow your mind. You've heard them speak all this year. You've seen their leadership. You've heard, and seen all the amazing work they've done, and it is our pleasure to bring them forth. You have heard him constantly in forums. You have seen his videos. You have read his books. And we are just delighted to let you know that Tim Wise is with us today. He is a prominent author, speaker, and anti-racism educator whose work spans over 3 decades and includes 9 influential books such as White Like Me and Dear White America. He has spoken at thousands of institutions, offering tools for navigating racial dynamics and systemic inequities and inequality as a senior fellow at the African American Policy Forum. Yes, the AAPF. Wise contributes to public education and strategic dialogue on race, power, and institutional reform, advancing the forum's mission to confront structural injustice through storytelling, advocacy, and truth-telling. Hi, Tim. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How about you?
All right now. And are you coming to us from the mighty Tennessee this morning, or are you elsewhere in the nation?
As always, no, I'm in Nashville, where it is unseasonable. Well, it's cold after being unseasonably warm on Christmas. So wow. I prefer cold weather at Christmas, but I don't prefer this. It's a little too chilly for me. So I don't know. We're hanging in there. We're hanging in there.
We got you. And the other guest that we're just delighted, beyond delighted to have back with us. She, of course, is internationally renowned. She has done so much amazing work. She is the co-founder and executive director of the African American Policy Forum, founder and executive director of the Center for Intersectionality and Social Policy Studies at Columbia Law School. She is the Isidore and Seville Schussbacher Professor at Columbia Law School. and the Promise Institute professor at UCLA Law School. She's a leading authority on civil rights, black feminist legal theory, and racism in the law. She's popularly known for her development of intersectionality, critical race theory, the Say Her Name campaign that just celebrated its 11th anniversary. I was there. I was so happy to, embrace these proud and amazing moms and daughters and sons and family members of those who have been slain by police, to give them an uplift against the cruelty that they suffered. She started that campaign 11 years ago. And she is happy to always be in the midst of thought leadership and in the midst of our ideological development. I am so happy to welcome Professor Kimberlé Crenshaw. Hey, Kim, are you there? All right. We will find out to make sure that we get her into the show, and she will be joining us as we do this work. All right, Daryl. So, you saw the latest, right? This administration will not stop. Did you guys see that today? Last night we found out that they have changed the U.S. Postal Service policies so that you're no longer. Remember how everybody would run to the post office to make sure you got your mail in before midnight, so it would have the right processing date, and that you could meet those deadlines. Well, now they're saying, well, we can't tell you when your, what deadline we might put on a piece of mail, because we got to send it to all these other places. So your mail, if you needed a postmark for elections, if you needed a postmark for your taxes, if you needed a postmark, it may not be the postmark you thought you were going to get. Wow. It just shows the continued evil of this administration. So we are not happy. So that's just one of the many, many, many evils that they continue to do to undermine our democracy. We know what's at stake here and what they're up against. So, Tim.
Yes.
Welcome. A lot of people have been able to hear your voice this year and have been happy to be, a lot of people called me and said, do you know this, Tim?
Well, we have known each other. We have known each other for a while. That's for sure.
And have you? I heard him speak. No Kings. I heard him speak. I saw his video. Is he for real? And so I said, "Oh, honey, you have no clue how for real he is." So tell people just a little bit about your background, so people know how serious and how amazing you are.
Well, I'm not going to tell you for the reason of seeming amazing. That's a little self-serving, but I appreciate your kind comments. But I'll be happy to let folks know sort of, the background piece. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. I have been doing anti-racism work for about 35 years, speaking around the country, writing books, as you mentioned, and working with Kim and the fine folks at AAPF to address issues of systemic racism. I am, as folks know, if you see my videos or, just based on the title of my book, White Like Me, folks can figure out I am white, been white for 57 years. I understand I know the handshake that we use in the white community. I know all the code words, all the language that we have used to cover up the reality of systemic racism for hundreds of years. And as an insider in that process, someone who knows the way that system works from the inside, I've been committed to undoing it for a long time. I was raised right by my folks, particularly by my mom, who at a very early age exposed me to an understanding of race and racism in this country that I think for the most part white children in the 1970s, let's say, were not likely to get from their family. So I was very fortunate to have that background. And then later to have some really incredible mentors. I was in college in New Orleans. I was doing community organizing in New Orleans, was involved in the campaigns against David Duke when he ran for U.S. Senate and governor in Louisiana, former Klan leader, lifelong white supremacist. So I've been at this for a minute, and, one of the things that I've noticed in 2025, or really going all the way back to 2016 when Donald Trump won the presidency the first time, is that a lot of that work that we were doing in Louisiana in 90 and 91 against David Duke, and we were trying to warn folks at that time that this political system was susceptible to racial extremism, racial scapegoating, blaming black and brown folk for problems that they did not create, and that candidates who could do that effectively, but who did not have the Klan and Nazi background of David Duke, could ultimately prove victorious in this country. And everybody thought we were crazy. They said, no, that's just Louisiana. This is a one-off. It's just y'all are different down there. Y'all have a different kind of system, and that couldn't happen. And no, David Duke couldn't win nationally. But as we said, all you had to do was put that same kind of package of racial scapegoating, blaming black and brown folks for problems they did not create, put that in the mouth and the mind of a more mainstream figure, which Donald Trump was, just given the history of his entertainment background, much more mainstream, and it could prove victorious. And here we are. So in a lot of ways, what we call Dukeism won. David Duke might have been defeated. Dukeism has won, and it has morphed into Trumpism and MAGA politics.
All right now, Tim,
Wow.
that's so amazing. Kim Crenshaw, Professor Crenshaw, I know you were there. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. Can you hear us now? Are you there? Okay. Engineer, please. Can you please do everything to make sure that Professor Crenshaw gets into the show? Thank you. Go ahead, Daryl.
Yeah. So you were speaking of you're working against David Duke in Louisiana. Do you see any parallels to what was happening when Duke was running for governor in Louisiana and what's happening now with this current administration?
I mean, I think the parallels are pretty direct. I think that what David Duke did in 90 and 91 was craft a political message that was virtually entirely about racial scapegoating. I mean, everything that he talked about, every problem that he identified, whether it was taxes being too high, government spending being too high, whether it was, who did and didn't get into college, or if you were unemployed, he blamed all of that on black and brown folks. He blamed it on affirmative action. He blamed it on social welfare programs. He blamed it on immigration. And at the time, he was probably too extreme for him to, although he came very close to winning, I should point out, he got 60% of the white vote in that Senate race. But he wasn't capable in the early 90s. America wasn't quite ready to elect that kind of person at that level of racism to be president. But as time went on, what the Republicans did is they learned. Pat Buchanan tried it very shortly after David Duke, and he was also quite successful with it, not quite as much as Trump, though. And so what I think Donald Trump has found is that going back to that well of racial resentment is a very fertile ground for politics. And if you listen very closely to what Donald Trump does, we all know, obviously, some of the overt racism of Donald Trump. But I would say that even if you listen to issues that don't sound like they're about race, they are still ultimately about blaming cultural, racial, or ethnic others. Even his talk about tariffs and trade. What does he say? The Chinese are taking advantage of us, right? The Venezuelans are taking advantage of us with their oil. Those people, it's always brown and black others, even globally, even with regard to global economics. So there's not a problem that he has identified that he ultimately will not blame racial, ethnic, or cultural others for. And that's something David Duke perfected. So I think the warnings that we were trying to offer, 35 years ago, if folks had listened to them, and frankly, if the Democratic Party had listened more closely and recognized the importance of challenging racial scapegoating, challenging anti-blackness, challenging the manipulation of racial resentment, we might not be where we are today. But unfortunately, they didn't listen very closely, and here we are.
All right.
Yeah, you point out the Democratic Party is not listening and moving forward. My question, though, is this. The way that the message that Trump and those of his ilk get out the way they get that message out is through the press. Is there something that the press has done? Is there some responsibility that the press has to stand up and